Rebirth, relaxed flow, daily life, female supporting, no CP, face slapping, cool writing. In her previous life, Yue Jiaojiao regarded her 4 biological disciples as her own children, but later on, the eldest disciple stabbed her with a sword and betrayed her from the sect. The second disciple dug up her spiritual roots to please people. The 3 disciples disrupted her cultivation and made her fall into a demon. The 4 disciples upheld the righteousness of heaven and earth and defeated her to ashes. And the actions of the 4 disciples were all for one woman. After Yue Jiao died, she learned that she was a supporting role in a book, and that the woman was the main character in the book. As for my role, it is to cultivate the 4 disciples and become the faithful lackeys of the female lead. Reviving one's life, the moon shines brightly, but after all, fate has been determined. What else is there to struggle with? So, at the apprenticeship gathering that was supposed to take in the eldest disciple, Yue Jiaojiao tied up a little beggar and left. In the mortal family where the second disciple was supposed to be accepted, Yue Jiaojiao reached out her finger and pointed towards the little trash next to him. In the secret realm of meeting the 3 disciples, Yue Jiaojiao looked at the boy trapped in the mud and hurriedly went down, digging a piece of lotus root. As for the 4 disciples who came to seek their apprenticeship, this position is even for a fool, not for him. Just how come these disciples, who were collected after being laid out, are getting more and more inappropriate? The relaxed daily routine of Master Putty and 4 inner turmoil disciples. Keywords of the novel. After being defeated by the teacher, the female supporting master is left with no pop-ups. After being defeated by the teacher, the female supporting master is left with no pop-ups. Download the complete text. After being defeated by the teacher, the female supporting master is left with no pop-ups. Read the latest chapter. Chapter 1. Stop the nitpicking. Stop it. It's rotten. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Stop the nitpicking. Stop it. It's rotten. I'll take those 4 white-eyed wolves as apprentices again. I'm just a dog. The heavenly way bears witness. The girl, dressed in a white robe, with disheveled hair and a pale face, stood on the mountain peak at night, facing the silver moon in the sky. She stretched out her right hand and gritted her teeth with 3 fingers facing upwards, swearing. Yue Jiaojiao asked herself, as a master, she sincerely cared for her disciples, and each one was raised as her own son. How could she end up being defeated by her disciples? In her previous life, as the head of one peak of the Changxian sect, one of the 4 sects, she received 4 disciples. Perhaps compared to other masters, she did not teach them much, but Yue Jiaojiao still devoted all her resources, knowledge, and martial arts to the 4 of them. What we mean is that we don't expect our disciples to take care of us in our old age, at least we must respect our teachers and uphold the Tao. But what about her dog apprentices? Chen Jinyu, the eldest disciple, directly drew his sword and stabbed the unsuspecting Yue Jiaojiao because Yue Jiaojiao did not agree to be his companion with the junior sister of the Luoxia sect. He then defected from the sect and became a disciple of the Luoxia sect. Second disciple He Yuanyang, as a disciple brought back by Yue Jiaojiao from the mortal world, usually looks like a dog. However, in the end, he was injured by the spirit root of the junior sister of the Sunset sect, and Yue Jiaojiao's spirit root happened to match it. He Yuanyang then poisoned Yue Jiaojiao in food and knocked her unconscious. He dug out her spirit root and went to pay tribute to the junior sister. Ji Xingting, the 3rd disciple and the child rescued by Yue Jiaojiao from the secret realm, looked quite honest and silent. However, when it was rumored that the junior sister of the Sunset sect had stolen Yue Jiaojiao's spiritual root, Ji Xingting, in order to help eliminate rumors, forcibly broke into Yue Jiaojiao's seclusion site, causing Yue Jiaojiao, who was still repairing her spiritual root, to go crazy and fall into the demon realm. As for the junior disciple Long Hanchen, it was not surprising. Faced with Yue Jiaojiao, who had already fallen into the demon realm, Long Hanchen not only did not think that the 3rd senior brother had a problem, but also believed that Yue Jiaojiao was already possessed by the impure 6 roots. In the end, he teamed up with the junior sister of the Sunset sect to defeat Yue Jiaojiao to the bone and turn it to ashes. Hate. I really hate it. Yue Jiaojiao gritted her teeth, and these 4 disciples were like agreed-upon butchers. One was knocked unconscious by a hammer, one was bloodied, one was plucked, and the other was unborn. And the bright moon is the pig. Until death, the bright moon didn't even understand what he had done to provoke these 4 disciples. It was not until her death that Yue Jiaojiao realized that she had always lived in a world of illustrated books, and that she was the dragon suit and villain in this illustrated book. As for the female lead, of course, it is Han Shi, the junior sister of the Sunset sect. The male lead is his own little disciple Long Hanchen. My other disciples, who were also devoted to being the female lead, were her most loyal licking dogs. Yue Jiaojiao. I dare to love her existence, just to cultivate 4 loyal love minds for the female lead, and then turn herself into a villain, to fight monsters and upgrade her performance, and to drape the medal of righteousness and annihilation for Long Hanchen. Why? Now, she has been reborn, the night before she accepted her first apprentice, and at this time, Yue Jiaojiao said she's giving up the blame. She's not doing it anymore. What kind of gentle and kind master in the early stage, and what kind of mischievous big demon in the later stage, all get lost. Whoever loves to be, it's a mess. If you have the ability to forcefully pull me away from the plot. Come on. Whoever likes to accept this disciple, I won't accept it anyway. When Li Yigui arrived at Chongqing Peak, he saw this scene. Yue Jiaojiao stood in front of the mountain peak, disheveled in clothes and hair, gritting her teeth and dancing loudly, shouting, "I won't do it anymore." The sword under his feet immediately stopped in place, and Li Yigui looked at the bright moon. He swallowed his saliva and spoke carefully. "Teacher. Junior sister." Upon hearing the sound, she looked up and realized it was her senior brother. Yue Jiaojiao quickly stopped her waving hands and lowered her head to straighten her clothes. Only then did she look up and show a self-proclaimed sweet smile. "Senior brother, are you here to see me at this time? What's up?" Li Yigui looked at the disheveled white robe in front of him, with hair fluttering and a smile on his face. Coupled with the darkness of the night, his heart became even more fearful, and he stumbled and almost fell off his sword. "Master asked us to gather in front of the sect, and we are going to the site of the apprenticeship gathering." Upon hearing these words, Yue Jiaojiao grinned and let out a hiss, toothache. The flag that had just been set up with the front foot was about to forcefully hit the back foot. Yue Jiaojiao looked at Li Yigui and tried to show herself pitifully. "Senior brother. Why don't I just go? I only have the cultivation of the golden elixir. Isn't accepting apprentices misleading people?" Li Yigui looked at Yue Jiaojiao, who looked like a female ghost, pretending to be pitiful. He couldn't flatter him, and what he said about it didn't count. Master said that all the peak masters in the sect who are in charge of the apprenticeship gathering this time must go, and you must bring back an apprentice by name, otherwise you will throw them into the forbidden area. The expression on Yue Jiaojiao's face instantly collapsed. How did Master manage to speak such cold and heartless words with a kind and amiable face? Yue Jiaojiao now really wants to fly to find her master, who is the head of the Chongxian sect, and vigorously promote the freedom of speech in accepting disciples, but she also knew that if she really did this, she might not really need to go and take in the apprentices because she would be thrown directly into the forbidden area. Moreover, his master was still able to achieve it, thinking that it was not a forbidden area for people to stay in the sect. Finally, Yue Jiaojiao chose the former between going to the apprenticeship assembly and being imprisoned. Ha! Yue Jiaojiao breathed a sigh of relief and looked up at Li Yigui with a sorrowful expression. "Got it. Could you please inform Master, senior brother, and I'll be there." At night, the mountain peaks were empty and the cold wind blew, making the sound of the moon particularly clear. Coupled with her attire and melancholic expression, Li Yigui felt even more haunted. He threw down a sentence and flew away like a sword. "Junior sister, hurry up. I'll go talk to my master now. Talk. Talk. Yue Jiaojiao touched her face, tilted her head in confusion as she looked at the empty night sky, with only sound echoing. What's wrong with senior brother? Why is it like seeing a ghost? However, Yue Jiaojiao didn't care about Li Yigui's reaction. The most important thing now is the upcoming apprenticeship ceremony. Yue Jiaojiao sighed. I originally thought that as long as I stayed away from those dog bastards from the previous life and became a happy salted fish, I had no choice but to accept my apprenticeship. Since that's the case. Yue Jiaojiao looked up at the silver moon in the sky, and a resolute expression flashed in her watery eyes. I can't avoid the apprenticeship gathering, can't I still avoid Chen Jinyu? In this life, even if I die, I won't accept their group of rebels. This book is enjoyable and relaxing. Welcome everyone to collect it and have fun together. Feel free to comment and speak freely together. Remember the 5-star review if you like it. End of this chapter. Isn't chapter 2 about accepting me as an apprentice? You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Isn't chapter 2 about accepting me as an apprentice? Every 10 years is a gathering of apprentices in the cultivation world, and the gathering is not held during the day, but in the early morning because the elders of each sect believe that those who can still persist in this aspect and come to worship must be those who have a firm mind and will surely become great masters in the future. Yue Jiaojiao sat in her own seat, yawning and looking listless. She doesn't know if the younger generation who can come to the conference at this point is really determined, she only knows that the elder who came up with this move is really useless. In the previous life, the moon was brought to the conference by my senior brother, and I was sitting here dozing off. Yue Jiaojiao believed that it must have been because she was not clear at the time that she mistakenly took Chen Jinyu's poisonous plant back as a good seedling. Yo, isn't this the illegitimate son of the Chen family? A lowly seed born to a foot-washing maid also dreams of achieving enlightenment and becoming an immortal. Just as Yue Jiaojiao couldn't resist and was about to fall asleep, a familiar conversation made her sit up straight. Yue Jiaojiao followed the sound and indeed saw a young man dressed in ordinary clothes, being surrounded and ridiculed by several young men and girls in luxurious clothing. In the face of ridicule from the crowd, the young man did not feel inferior or cowardly. Instead, he held his chin high and responded forcefully. Practice relies on hard work, regardless of one's background. Listening to the words of young Chen Jinyu, Yue Jiaojiao almost applauded and cheered. Yes, that's the taste. She was awakened by this sentence, who had been sleeping soundly in her previous life, and began to treat Chen Jinyu differently. As for this life, okay, that's great. Chen Jinyu and the crowd surrounding him were all startled by the angry voice. Chen Jinyu turned around and saw a woman dressed in a snow-blue imperial robe, standing there with only a couple of decades of age, admiring her with eyes full of admiration. Seeing that Yue Jiaojiao was interested in him, Chen Jinyu's eyes lit up. His previous words were meant to be heard by these fairies who came to collect disciples. Because he was not valued since childhood, Chen Jinyu didn't know if he could cultivate, but as long as he caught the attention of an immortal, he would definitely seize the opportunity to become a child of the immortal family. And now, the opportunity has come. Chen Jinyu directly pushed aside the other Chen family children surrounding him and strode towards Yue Jiaojiao. With a pop sound, Chen Jinyu had already knelt in front of Yue Jiaojiao. Disciple Chen Jinyu, dare to worship the immortal as his teacher, I hope the immortal succeeds. The children of the Chen family around couldn't help but mock Chen Jinyu. Just you. Get out of here, don't dirty the fairy's eyes. Chen Jinyu still knelt and remained indifferent. As long as the fairy in front of him hasn't spoken yet, he still has a chance. Looking at the same thing that happened in the previous life, Yue Jiaojiao couldn't help nodding. It was really familiar and memorable. Well, the top-notch Dan Lingzhen is actually a good cultivator. As soon as Yue Jiaojiao spoke, Chen Jinyu's face showed joy. Great, he really didn't gamble wrong. And the other Chen family members were full of disbelief. How could this be possible? He's a lowly race, how could he have a divine connection? Yue Jiaojiao raised her hand, extended her index finger, and slowly pointed forward. Since that's the case, then I'll accept. You become my disciple. Thank you very much, Master. Disciple Chen Jinyu, pay respects to Master. Ha ha ha. Chen Jinyu trembled with excitement and immediately bowed in gratitude, but before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by the thunderous laughter around him. Chen Jinyu angrily raised his head and glared at the Chen family's children who were laughing uncontrollably around him, covering their stomachs and bending down. How dare you laugh so absurdly in front of the immortal family, reckless. A child of the Chen family laughed with tears in his eyes, and pointed a folding fan at Chen Jinyu. The most absurd thing should be you. Ha ha ha. Chen Jinyu's face turned pale with iron. I am already a disciple of the immortal family. How dare you mock me? Look at me and let my master punish me. Chen Jinyu turned to Yue Jiaojiao, just as he was about to use her identity to feign tiger power, he suddenly froze in place. What's going on? Isn't the immortal taking me as his disciple? Why? Is it not me? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Apprenticeship. Who should I take it from? Do you accept me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Apprenticeship. Who should I take it from? Do you accept me? Following the slender and bright white fingers of the moon, I saw that although she was pointing towards Chen Jinyu's side, there was a slight deviation, crossing over Chen Jinyu and pointing towards a little beggar behind him. Please be kind and give me some. The little beggar, holding a broken bowl in his hand and begging from the people around him, felt the scorching gaze from all around him, and his movements paused. Stubbornly turning his head to look around, the little beggar was horrified to find that the disciples of the aristocratic families who came to pay their respects, as well as the so-called Immortals sitting above, were all staring at him for what? This makes him feel very dangerous. He just happened to know that there would be a big event in this place at this time today, and the attendees were all wealthy people. He came over to try his luck and see if he could ask for more money. Why is it still the most eye-catching one now? Isn't begging allowed here? The little beggar silently took out the few copper coins from the bowl and put them into his arms. So what? I'm leaving now. The little beggar first cautiously took a few steps back, then suddenly turned around and took a big step before running. But when he took the first step, he was surprised to find that he couldn't move anymore. The moon shone brightly on the fingertips, and then Sherlan walked up to the little beggar. Gudong. Looking at the bright moon standing in front of him, the little beggar couldn't help but swallow his saliva. This is a fairy, a bunch of people are eager to worship her as their teacher. When did I provoke her? Could it be that begging here on her own dirted her eyes? It's not impossible, those people in high positions don't all have strange moldy heads. Yue Jiaojiao looked at the seemingly calm little beggar in front of her with a gentle smile. Young man, what's your name? Just finished speaking, Yue Jiaojiao was stunned. Why did the little beggar who was fine just now suddenly tremble? At this frequency. We won't be able to shake it apart later, will we? Yue Jiaojiao didn't know how rich the inner play of the little beggar was at this moment. What is this for? Not killing unknown people, so planning to ask for names and kill people to silence. I really died before I was born. Did my first day, are you willing to be my disciple? Begging the immortal to leave me with a whole corpse. Their voices rang out simultaneously, and after speaking, both of them were stunned. Little beggar. Accepting disciples. Who should I take it from? Do you accept me? Yue Jiaojiao. A whole corpse. Kill who? Do I kill you? Two people, one big and one small, stared at each other with big eyes, and a moment of silence fell around them. On the other side, Chen Jinyu is already going crazy. Isn't it said that he is the ultimate spiritual root? Shouldn't it be accepting him as an apprentice? Is this immortal having a mental cramp and actually going to take a little beggar as his disciple? No, no, there must be something wrong. Chen Jinyu didn't believe in evil and ran forward to stand in front of Yue Jiaojiao, trying to show himself to be neither humble nor arrogant. Immortal, are you wrong? Aren't you taking me as your disciple? Yue Jiaojiao looked at Chen Jinyu, her big eyes blinking innocently. That's right, who said I'm taking you as an apprentice? But didn't you say I was the ultimate spiritual root and a good cultivator? Are you the ultimate spiritual root, so I'm taking you as my disciple? Yue Jiaojiao's face was full of confusion, and the children of the Chen family who were watching the play around him did not hide their mockery of Chen Jinyu, one by one wishing to laugh at Yue's appearance. Chen Jinyu gritted his teeth in anger, feeling somewhat embarrassed by being mocked. For a young boy, this can indeed be considered a childhood shadow. But now, Yue Jiaojiao doesn't care if Chen Jinyu will have childhood shadows. She only knows that if she really accepts this disciple, her future life will really be full of shadows. Yue Jiaojiao directly reached out and pulled apart Chen Jinyu, who was blocking in front of her. Make way, you're blocking my disciple. Chen Jinyu glared angrily at the little beggar. A beggar who doesn't even have good clothes has no right to snatch his immortal fate. Little beggar. Who did I provoke and who did I provoke? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Chen Jinyu habitually hits himself in the face. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Chen Jinyu habitually hits himself in the face. Immortal, he is just a beggar who is naked and lacks food. What qualifications do you have to be your disciple? Seeing Yue Jiaojiao wholeheartedly wanting to accept beggars as his disciple, Chen Jinyu felt jealous and even more puzzled. Although he was very excellent, why did the immortal just not look up to him? Upon hearing this, Yue Jiaojiao paused and looked at Chen Jinyu expressionlessly, as if she wanted to examine him from the inside out. Chen Jinyu was stared at with hair on his head and took an uncontrollable step back. Immortal, immortal. Just now, when you were ridiculed by others, you once said to yourself, the path of cultivation depends on hard work, not on luxurious clothing. A cold smile rose from the corner of the moon's bright mouth, and Chen Jinyu, who is used to hitting himself in the face, in his previous life, he confidently claimed that he and Han Shi, the junior sister of the Luoxia sect, were in true love, allowing Yue Jiaojiao to succeed. However, in the end, Han Shi fell into the arms of his fourth junior brother. In this life, he began to slap his face hard again. Now that you have started to look down on a beggar yourself, I suspect that your previous words were just a show. Yue Jiaojiao's voice was plain, but these words made Chen Jinyu blush directly after hearing them, stuttering and not knowing how to explain. Well, I didn't mean that. I don't care what you mean. Yue Jiaojiao passed over Chen Jinyu directly and walked towards the little beggar who was still fixed. To me, you are nothing, so I don't care what you really are. Yue Jiaojiao picked up the little beggar with one hand and placed it under her armpit, laughing like a spring breeze. Good disciple, let's go back to the sect. The long sword from the waist grabbed its sheath and landed at the feet of the moon, flying into the air with the two of them. Chen Jinyu stood in place dumbfounded, with the cries of a little beggar echoing above his head in high octaves. Can you ask me how I feel before leaving? Hey! Chen Jinyu comforted himself in his heart. Although he had been walking for a month, there were still other elders and peak masters around him. Now that he knew he was a top-notch spiritual root, someone would always take him as his disciple. Thinking this way, Chen Jinyu wanted to recommend himself to other elders of Changxian's sect, but he didn't expect to turn his head and see that the place of Changxian's sect was already empty. This is clearly not taking him seriously. Damn Changxian sect, today's revenge for humiliation will be repaid 100 times in the future. Yue Jiaojiao didn't care about the enmity with Chen Jinyu. After all, when Chen Jinyu stabbed her sword in the previous life, the two were already enemies. And the most important thing now is not that either. Let me down, I don't want to cultivate immortality. Ah. Slow down, I get motion sickness. Hurry up, I'm about to fall. Listening to the shouting in her ear, Yue Jiaojiao felt a commotion, her fingertips flickering with spiritual power, and she cast a silent spell. In an instant, the world fell silent, except for the sound of the wind blowing in my ear. Everything was silent. Yue Jiaojiao finally cleared up. The little beggar can't move or speak, only his eyes can blink and his nostrils can breathe. Is this an apprenticeship? This is clearly kidnapping. But now all means have been sealed off, and the little beggar can only work hard to lift his head from under the bright moon's armpit, stare at her. At this moment, Yue Jiaojiao was in a good mood, humming a tune and enjoying the breeze, feeling really happy. It's just that the good times don't last long, junior sister, junior sister. Li Yigui's voice came from behind, and Yue Jiaojiao slowed down and looked back in confusion. Li Yigui pursued last month's Jiaojiao with his sword, looking down at the little beggar who was being resisted under his arms, his expression indescribable. Looking up, Li Yigui looked at Yue Jiaojiao seriously and solemnly. Junior sister, have you really decided to accept this little beggar as your disciple? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. 24 Filial Piety and Good Apprentice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 24 Filial Piety and Good Apprentice. Yeah. I think this kid really suits my eye. Yue Jiaojiao raised the small beggar who had slipped down the list and answered Li Yigui with a smile on her face. After all, Yue Jiaojiao couldn't tell Li Yigui that when she came to the apprenticeship conference, she didn't plan to take the apprenticeship seriously, did she? There used to be 4 dog breeds as a warning from the past, but now Yue Jiaojiao is just as nervous as the wind. It's better to bring an ordinary person back to Chongqing Peak instead of a disciple who has a spiritual root and extremely high talent, but may turn against the tide in the future. This is also the reason why Yue Jiaojiao insisted on kidnapping the little beggar back then. I don't want to accept my apprentices, and this little beggar is also helpless. It's better to treat it as charity. At least the little beggar can follow me without worries about food and clothing, right? But the little beggar under the bright moon's armpits won't be moved by this. Li Yigui looked at the master-apprentice group with a unique painting style in front of him, his mouth twitching several times, but he finally sighed and shook his head. Junior sister, listen to my advice. It's better for you to think again, after all. You also know master's temper. Upon hearing Li Yigui mention her master, Yue Jiaojiao's smile stiffened. If that stubborn little old man knew he had taken in a little beggar with no spiritual roots, perhaps he would have really gone crazy with anger, but I don't seem to have violated my master's orders either. I have followed my master's request and taken my disciple back. Don't worry, senior brother. My master will not punish me. The clever Yue Jiaojiao directly took advantage of the loophole. Initially, his master said he wanted to recruit his own disciples. As for what kind of ghosts, snakes, and gods he recruited, there was no rule in his family. Li Yigui was amused by Yue Jiaojiao. Also, the young junior sister has extremely high cultivation talents and is highly favored by her master. Perhaps she really won't be punished. Senior brother, I won't advise you anymore. It's a pity that the kid from before, with his top-notch spiritual root talent, should make some progress in the future. Yue Jiaojiao and Li Yigui strolled side by side in the air with their swords, and couldn't help but mutter in their hearts as they listened to Li Yigui's words. He has made great achievements. He is a great disciple of the 24 Filial Piety, wielding his sword to stab his own master. By the way, senior brother, Chen Jinyu won't be taken away by other senior brothers and sisters, will he? Suddenly thinking of this, Yue Jiaojiao looked at Li Yigui with concern. The abbot Xuanzong naturally did not only have 2 people, but also the leaders of other peaks, all of whom were the personal disciples of the Chongxian sect leader and the 7 senior brothers and sisters of Yue Jiaojiao. Yue Jiaojiao knows what kind of virtue Chen Jinyu is, but others don't know. If others are happy to see Chen Jinyu and pick up this garbage from Chongxian sect, wouldn't their previous efforts be in vain? I saw Li Yigui shaking his head, they have already found their favorite disciple to take back, and you are the only one picking and choosing there, becoming the last one. That's good. Yue Jiaojiao breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, she was already brainstorming how to bring Chen Jinyu out of the Changxian sect. Fortunately, things didn't happen. There is one more thing that needs to be reminded to junior sister. The speed of the imperial sword was very fast. Even if the two intentionally slowed down, they still returned to Changqing Peak. Li Gui looked at him, who was still sandwiched under the armpit by the bright moon. The wind blowing with the imperial sword was scattered like a rag doll, and he suddenly spoke up. The moon is not clear, so. Senior brother, what else is there? Since junior sister has chosen to be an apprentice, you must take on the responsibility of being a master, even if he has no spiritual roots. Li Gui looked at the young junior sister in front of him, just like an old father who earnestly taught his child, our sect is not something that can be left behind simply by accepting disciples. He must pass the freshman test in 3 months before he can officially enter, otherwise. You know, junior sister. Li Gui's words suddenly made Yue Jiaojiao react. Yeah, why did I forget? If a newcomer can't pass the freshman test, they will still be kicked off the mountain. Isn't that little beggar? Thank you for reminding me, senior brother. I have taken note of it. Yue Jiaojiao's face was tinged with a hint of seriousness, feeling guilty for her previous reckless actions. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Yue Jiaojiao is a female bandit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Yue Jiaojiao is a female bandit. You can rest in this room for now, and tomorrow I will teach you how to cultivate. Yue Jiaojiao casually pushed open a door on Changqing Peak and said to the little beggar who had finally been lifted from all restrictions. The activity eased his stiff hands and feet. The little beggar wanted to turn around and run, but he also knew that he had been abducted back into the cave by the old witch and couldn't find a way to run. He could only angrily glare at Yue Jiaojiao. I don't want to practice, nor do I want to find any immortal fate. This is the first time in her life that Yue Jiaojiao has heard someone who doesn't want to practice. Who in this world doesn't want to achieve immortality, gain countless lifespans, and even touch the real opportunity to ascend to become a god? Yue Jiaojiao only thought that the little beggar had never heard of the benefits of cultivation, or had been forcibly tied back by herself, so she had a certain resistance to cultivation. Feeling embarrassed to touch her nose, Yue Jiaojiao decided to first promote the benefits of cultivation to the little beggar. Practicing not only helps you strengthen your body, but also helps you no longer go hungry, no longer be bullied, and even the wealthy people you used to despise in your eyes, and even the emperors of the mortal world will give you 3 points of respect when they see you. Are you really unwilling? Unexpectedly, the little beggar sneered at the bright moon's words. I'm not a child, I don't listen to your nonsense. Anyway. I definitely won't practice. Do you really think he's a child who knows nothing and can be fooled with just 1 or 2 words? How could it be? He has never seen the end result of a person who truly cultivates immortals before, but the more unwilling the little beggar was, the more he even stirred up Yue Jiaojiao's rebellious heart. What you're saying now is that you promised to follow me obediently for cultivation one day. Anyway, you have already been tied back by me now. If you don't want to, you have to be willing. Yue Jiaojiao directly pushed the little beggar into the room. There's hot water and clean clothes inside. Wash yourself well and take a nap. I don't want to see a mud dog tomorrow. After speaking, Yue Jiaojiao walked away without looking back, looking like a female bandit. You. Looking at the graceful figure of Yue Jiaojiao, the little beggar couldn't figure out how to retaliate against her, and he couldn't escape either. In the end, he had to give up and decided to stay calm for a while before finding an opportunity to leave. Bang! Yue Jiaojiao turned around and looked at the tightly closed door, sighing, after all, I have just been reborn and have become impulsive. I only thought about how to give Chen Jinyu a chance to change his life, but I didn't want to change the life of the little beggar as well. I thought as a beggar, if I helped him with his basic needs and also helped him become stronger, the other party would be very happy. But because of one's own assumptions, one overlooks their true feelings. But the matter has come to this point, and even the moon cannot let the person go back. Chen Jinyu will not only blame me for what happened today, but also hold a grudge against the little beggar. If I put the person back, if Chen Jinyu touches me one day, I will definitely be shattered to pieces. The gentle breeze rustled the forests on Chongqing Peak, and also blew the bright hair of the moon into the air. The bright moon in the night seemed particularly helpless and lonely. Well, if he is willing to cultivate, I will teach him as much as possible so that he can fight against Chen Jinyu. If not, I will protect one more person in the future. With a murmur, Yue Jiao let out a mouthful of turbid air and walked towards her room. On the other hand, the little beggar soaked himself in the bathtub. This was his first time taking a bath seriously. In the past, having a place to eat and shelter from the rain was good. Who would care if he was dirty? These cultivators will enjoy it when they arrive, but a few years ago, the village was washed with blood stains by heavy rain. In my mind, I will never practice. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. No good thing for cultivating immortals. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. No good thing for cultivating immortals. The early sun climbed up the Chongqing Peak, and the chirping of the lark echoed by the window. The gentle breeze drifted, creating a serene and comfortable atmosphere. Yue Jiaojiao rolled over on the bed, sleeping soundly. Bang! Yue Jiaojiao, you rebellious disciple, get out of here. A loud kick at the door and a strong roar from the East River Lion startled Yue Jiaojiao to jump out of bed, with her confused eyes wide open. She hastily put on her clothes and was about to clean up her delicate skin. What's going on? What's going on? The demon clan is coming up. Run away quickly. Turning her head, she met the master who was blowing her beard and glaring, and Yue Jiaojiao swallowed the unfinished words into her stomach. As if unintentionally throwing the half-packed bundle behind her, Yue Jiaojiao tried to raise a natural smile. Master, this early morning, what kind of wind has brought your elderly home? Don't call me master, I don't have a master like you. At this moment, the leader of Chongqian's sect was so angry that his white hair, which was full of immortal aura, was about to stand upright, and he spoke without hesitation, You rebellious disciple, do you just want to anger me to death and make the entire Chongqian sect Huohua disappear to feel comfortable? Yue Jiaojiao cleverly dodged the Buddha's palm that her master had struck, knowing that he was angry because he had taken in a little beggar who was unable to cultivate, but still pretended to be foolish. Master, what are you saying? I can't understand you. Looking at his disciple like a rolling blade of meat, the head of Chongqian's sect felt a myocardial infarction and immediately became furious. Rebel disciple, see if I don't kill you. Yue Jiaojiao runs away as soon as she starts, it's a joke. Can it be true to stand and fight someone? So, in the early morning, a scene appeared on Chongqing Peak. A girl in purple ran ahead, occasionally dodging spells shot from behind and provoking her. Dressed in solemn attire behind him, the old man with white hair was chasing after him with open teeth and claws. Rebel disciple, what do you think is my Chongqing Peak? Anyone can bring it back. That's the disciple I admire, not a casual person. What benefits do you think accepting such apprentices would bring to you? It's my way or the highway, rebels. Dot. Ping pong, dong. Bang. Clatter. 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 When the little beggar rubbed his eyes and opened the door, he saw a group of old and young people chasing after each other with a clanging kick, which startled the little beggar who had never seen the world before. What are you doing here? Is this the way cultivators cultivate themselves? He knew that cultivating immortality was not a good thing. Upon hearing the voice of the little beggar, Yue Jiaojiao and the leader of Chongqian's sect both stopped. They were used to getting along like this, but after all, there were others around, so don't scare the child. Cough, is this the disciple you took in? The head of Changxian's sect took on an elder-like posture and looked up and down at the little beggar, but no matter what he saw, there was no spiritual fluctuation on the little beggar's body. You should know that as long as you carry a spiritual root, even the lowest level spiritual root, even if you have never practiced it before, will still have spiritual energy fluctuations on your body. If you have no spiritual roots like this, you are a person without any spiritual roots. Yue Jiaojiao also straightened her hair, which was running with fried hair. Yes, master. This is the apprentice I just received, doesn't it look good? Upon hearing the words of Yue Jiaojiao, the leader of Changxian's sect only wanted to say, not bad, you have a big head, but after all, he was still in front of the little beggar. He had just seen the scene of chasing the moon, and now he still wanted to save his image as a fairy. He nodded slowly. It looks like a dog-like person. The little beggar's mouth twitched. If you don't know how to praise others, you can avoid saying that. There really isn't a good thing for cultivating immortals. Yue Jiaojiao, on the other hand, takes advantage of the slope and happily raises her head. Well, my vision won't be wrong. Facing the murderous gaze of her master, Yue Jiaojiao obediently shut up. The leader of Changxian's sect smiled kindly at the little beggar. Young man, please go back to your room and continue resting. I have something important to discuss with your master. The little beggar looked at the smile on the face of the patriarch of Changxian's sect, feeling anxious. This old man doesn't look like a good person either. Coincidentally, he didn't want to see what the two of them were up to. The little beggar quickly closed the door and went back to sleep in the cage. The patriarch of Changxian's sect laughed heartily. Not to mention whether this child can cultivate, he, like his young disciple, has quite a personality. Looking back at the bright moon, I saw that the other person was still smiling and didn't feel like I had done anything wrong. I glared. You're so funny. The bright moon instantly withdrew its smile and stood obediently. Looking at such a young disciple, the leader of Changxian's sect couldn't help but shake his head and sigh, feeling that it was because Yue Jiaojiao had become accustomed to being stubborn that he did such a thing without considering the consequences. Speak earnestly. Jiao Jiao, you know that as a teacher, you must be able to bear the word teacher and take responsibility. He has no spiritual roots and cannot cultivate. Accepting him as an apprentice is extremely irresponsible to you and this child. Yue Jiaojiao knew that her master was afraid that she would only accept the little beggar on a whim, and in the end not only confiscate him as an apprentice, but also let the little beggar suffer along with him. Putting aside the playful attitude she had just had, Yue Jiaojiao looked seriously at the leader of Changxian's sect and promised. Master, rest assured that since I have decided to take him as my disciple, I will definitely allow him to cultivate and never let him be kicked down the mountain in the freshman test. Seeing the resolute appearance of Yue Jiaojiao, the leader of Changxian's sect didn't say much anymore. Although the young apprentice usually looked unreliable, he always kept his promise and reached out to pat Yue Jiaojiao's shoulder. Since you have already decided, I won't say much about it as a teacher. I'm just waiting for the freshman test in 3 months. Can you give me a surprise? The moon is bright and the smile is bright. Master, don't worry, I won't let you down. Master Changxian nodded, turned around and left, leaving behind a sentence. 7 days later, the Cloud Mountain secret realm will open, with a plant of Yunling bone flower inside. Perhaps it can help you, this little disciple, conceive a spiritual root. Yue Jiaojiao's heart warmed as she watched the leader of Changxian's sect leave behind. Indeed, even if my master gets angry with my absurd behavior, he will still help me solve the mess in the end. Just like in my previous life, when my mind was influenced and I became obsessed, and everyone slandered and condemned me, only my master, disregarding his position as the leader of a righteous sect, wanted to protect me. He would rather be despised by the world than believe that I had ulterior motives for becoming obsessed. Unfortunately, the heavenly way never stood by my side. In the end, I was killed by my own disciple, and my master was also strangled by the elders of other sect leaders. The old man who usually values image the most, ended up leaving this world in rags, disheveled and unkempt, thinking about the sadness of her past life. How could Yue Jiaojiao endure or shed 2 tears? Yue Jiaojiao quickly wiped away the tears on her face, revealing a bright smile. Master trusts me so much, I will definitely not let him down. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Do you want to shut down? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Do you want to shut down? I didn't expect to wander around and still go to the Cloud Mountain secret realm. In her previous life, Yue Jiaojiao also went to the Yunshan secret realm to search for the Yunling bone flower, but it was for her then great disciple Chen Jinyu. In retrospect, Yue Jiao only doubted whether he was blind at the beginning, but he didn't see that Chen Jinyu had always been a scum stick falling into porridge. When Yue Jiaojiao did not take Chen Jinyu as his disciple, the entire Changxian sect was called intimate and harmonious, because each peak leader on the main peak was a senior brother, so they were very friendly and helpful to each other. Even if one day you run out of time or become lazy, you can just throw your apprentice to another peak master to help take care of the child. After Chen Jinyu arrived, what happened? People came the night before, and their spiritual roots were destroyed the next day during the day. I don't know if Chen Jinyu can't resist loneliness or if he genuinely wants to show off. The next day, he started hammering with a disciple from another main peak. Because of something. The matter has been separated for a very long time, and the bright moon is hard to remember. It seems that the disciple looked at Chen Jinyu and said, although I am not the ultimate spiritual root, I will also work hard to cultivate it. It was clearly a word of encouragement from others, but to Chen Jinyu, it sounded like they were looking down on him and jealous of him. What kind of persecuted delusional person is this? Yue Jiaojiao feels awkward now. But at that time, Chen Jinyu stood up directly and just got up with the other person. Even if the other person apologized sincerely, this guy still kicked his nose and face, so he couldn't forgive anyone. In the end. Of course, Chen Jinyu was successfully beaten. At that time, Chen Jinyu had just joined the sect on his first day and had not even learned how to gather spirits, so he provoked his disciples who had already laid a foundation. So, successfully receiving a slap, the spiritual root cracked with a bang. The moon now only says, deserved. But at that time, she didn't know how to do it. She successfully inherited Yue Jiaojiao, the guardian of the Changxian clan, and on the same day, she killed Chang Sufeng with Chen Jinyu. With her third senior brother being both a pill, a treasure, and an apology, Yue Jiaojiao reluctantly let go. But since then, the relationship between Changqing Peak and Changsu Peak has become very delicate. And Chen Jinyu's spiritual roots showed cracks, and in the end, he had to wipe his buttocks with the master of Yue Jiaojiao, who was a big injustice. At that time, the Yunshan secret realm was opened, and it was heard that there were spiritual bone flowers born inside, which could repair, enhance, or even nurture spiritual roots. Without even thinking about it, Yue Jiaojiao left the secret realm with her sword in hand. If anyone had known that Chen Jinyu would later stab me in the back, it would have been better to let him be a useless person. Fortunately, I fought against the demon beasts at the peak of the golden elixir for 3 days and 3 nights for him. The more I think about Yue Jiaojiao, the more I feel like I'm at a disadvantage. Why did all those thankless things end up on me? It's normal to have a monster guarding the heavenly materials and earthly treasures, but she didn't expect to encounter the monster at the peak of the golden core. At that time, Yue Jiaojiao was only in the later stage of the golden elixir. Even though she had exceptional talents and abilities, she was among the top in the same level. It was very difficult to obtain the soul bone flower. Even in the end, Yunling bone flower was obtained, and Yue Jiaojiao suffered a considerable injury. No, I can't just foolishly hold a sword and single-handedly challenge the demon beasts at the peak of the golden elixir this time. There are still 7 days left, and with hard work, I should be able to reach the peak of the golden elixir. Now that she knows the strength of that monster, Yue Jiaojiao naturally won't do nothing and wait to be beaten. Determined, Yue Jiaojiao walked forward and knocked on the door of the little beggar's room. Why? I'll say it again, I don't know how to cultivate. The door was opened, and the little beggar's washed white face was guarded as he looked at the bright moon, not to mention quite fierce. You don't have a spiritual root now, even if you want to cultivate, it's useless. Yue Jiaojiao was not used to the little beggar at all, shrugging her shoulders with a look of disdain. I'm here to tell you that I'm going to be locked up for a while. There's food and water in the kitchen, and if you're hungry or thirsty, remember to go eat it yourself. I don't want to wait until I leave and see a little beggar who's starving to dryness. Yue Jiaojiao thought the little beggar would roll his eyes and then throw down a sentence, "What do you care about me?" before slamming the door, but she didn't expect the little beggar's face to suddenly turn pale. You want to shut down. End of this chapter. Chapter 9 Yue Jiao. Did I go to kill and set fire? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Yue Jiao. Did I go to kill and set fire? Yeah. Yue Jiaojiao looked at the pale face of the little beggar with a puzzled expression. Did you really mean to go to seclusion? What do you think of the little beggar's reaction, as if he heard that he was going to kill and set fire? After receiving a positive response from Yue Jiaojiao, the little beggar was even more flustered. You said you wanted to stay in seclusion, and I can't practice either. No, why don't you let me go? We can't stay here anymore, even if we have food and shelter, we can't stay, otherwise we'll really die. The little beggar only has this one idea in his heart now. He is still so young, how can he be here with this old witch looking up at the bright and radiant face of the moon? How can we wait to die with this female bandit here? For some reason, Yue Jiaojiao clearly felt that the little beggar was very anxious at this moment, but she didn't know where the source of this panic came from. Just squinting and frowning in disgust. I won't keep you from practicing. What are you doing when you leave? And what else can you do when you return to the mortal world? Continue to be your beggar. Yue Jiaojiao reached out and patted the little beggar's shoulder to comfort him, thinking that he was afraid that he might be in danger alone. Don't worry, although you will be the only one left on Chongqing Peak, you are very safe and don't have to be afraid. I am the only one who dares to be buried with you. The little beggar's body trembled even more violently, and he opened his mouth to say something more, but Yue Jiaojiao didn't give him the chance. Time is running out, I need to quickly improve my cultivation, so I won't tell you more. Abandoning this sentence, Yue Jiaojiao directly wielded her sword and went to her secluded place at Chongqing Peak. The little beggar's gaze followed the figure of Yue Jiaojiao's sword leaving, raised his hand and made a pleading gesture, tears streaming down his face. No, must you be so cruel to me? But the bright moon's back was so cold and ruthless that it never stopped for the little beggar, like a heartless man who would just lift his pants and leave. The little beggar raised his hand and wiped away the bitter tears from his face. No, you must leave this damn place. As soon as he spoke, the little beggar immediately returned to his room, tidied up a few sets of new clothes, and held several vases decorated in the room in his arms. After following the roasted chicken, roast duck, and sauce pig trotters in the kitchen, the little beggar began his escape journey along the path of Chongqing Peak. Just from the sunny morning breeze to the sunny noon sky, until the evening sun sets over the western mountains, the little beggar felt like he had turned around the top of Chongqing Peak 180 times, but couldn't find the way down the mountain. There is indeed a path towards the mountains, but joke, the female thief is locked up inside, like a bomb that could explode at any moment. How could she possibly go in and die? Does this female bandit usually not come down the mountain? The little beggar sat on the west side of Chongqing Peak with a mournful face, watching the sun gradually fade into the mountains and complaining while gnawing on the pig's trotters. If these words were heard by the female bandit Yue Jiaojiao, she would surely kindly touch the little beggar's head and say something that would make him autistic. Baby, in Chongxian sect, everyone goes up and down the mountain with swords as for those disciples who are temporarily unable to wield swords. Changxian's sect would automatically assume that these people are fledgling birds, so they should stay on their respective mountain tops and be protected. So, little beggars who are protected naturally cannot run down. Shrug your shoulders. JPG, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. Rising like a sugar man about to blow out. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Rising like a sugar man about to blow out on a rainy night, the strong winds continue, and the howling sound of the wind is like the mournful howl of a fierce ghost. It is said that there lived a young man at the east end of the village, who was a cultivator who could ascend to heaven and enter the earth, and could do anything. The people in the village all believe that this person is the guardian god of the village. As long as he is present, no one dares to bully the people in the village. After all, they are a village covered by immortals. In order to win the favor of the immortals, everyone always filial piety to the good things in their family. The immortals did indeed protect the village, and only the few villages around them could stay up all night and leave nothing behind. Until that day, the immortal said he wanted to cultivate, and everyone dared not disturb him. They all hoped that the immortal could become stronger and better protect the village. On that day, it rained heavily, and the crops in the fields were flooded. The road was washed away by the heavy water, leaving only stones. The old man said that the sky was crying and something was going to happen. That night, a loud noise erupted from the residence of the fairy at the east end of the village, and then blood, endless blood, spread through the pouring rain throughout the entire village. The once prosperous village turned into a dead place overnight. The little beggar hid in a pile of rice soaked in heavy rain, looking through the cracks at the fairy outside who had already turned red-eyed. He had protruding blood vessels all over his body, his eyes were full of red blood, and his muscles were bulging. The little beggar didn't know what was going on, only felt that the person who was usually called a fairy was like a sugar man about to be blown out, which was very comical. But the little beggar dared not laugh. He covered his mouth tightly for fear of making a sound. The people in the village were all dead, dying in the hands of immortals, like pinching candy balls one by one. He was stuffed into the rice pile by his grandfather while taking advantage of the chaos. He knew that as long as he made a little noise, he would also turn into an exploding sugar ball in the next moment. Click. There was a thunderous sound in the air, and a purple lightning bolt rushed straight towards the direction of the rice pile. The already mentally tense little beggar was startled and shook his body. And even so little sound was still heard by the fairy. The immortal suddenly turned his head to look at the rice pile, his eyes staring as if they were about to fall out of their sockets in the next second, and then walked step by step towards the rice pile. The little beggar's eyes were fixed on the steps the fairy was taking, his heart pounding and gradually becoming more consistent with the frequency of the fairy's steps. Suddenly, the rice in front of the little beggar was waved open by a big hand, staring at a pair of round eyes. The fairy, who was red all over, had already stood in front of him. Looking at the big hand reaching out to him, the little beggar closed his eyes in fear, knowing that he was about to become the next candy ball to be crushed. Ah! Ah! The imagined pain did not come, and the little beggar only heard a hoarse and painful sound, like sandpaper rubbing against him. Carefully opening his eyes, the little beggar saw the fairy squeezing his neck with both hands, struggling in pain, and for some reason, he felt as if the fairy had become even more swollen. Ah! Help! Help! The fairy's body began to shake violently, and the little beggar seemed to feel something and quickly retreated, but his movements are still too slow. Bang! Don't! On the bed of Changqing Peak, the little beggar suddenly sat up, with beads of sweat as big as beans continuously sliding down his forehead. Breathing heavily, the little beggar looked around in panic, realizing that he was in the room of Changqing Peak, and gradually breathed a sigh of relief. But the blood flower blooming in the rain still lingers in my mind. The little beggar looked towards the direction of the moon's bright seclusion. This female bandit is really not worth her life. End of this chapter.